Hi, my name is Debby Wolfe, and you're listening to In Her Words.
Everyone has a story. Welcome to In Her Words, a podcast from women in entertainment where female creatives and allies share their stories in their own words.
This is a dedicated space centered on how to harness creativity for inspiring and impactful projects in the ever-changing landscape of entertainment.
I'm Renee Rossi,
I'm Gretchen McCourt.
and this is In Her Words.
Welcome to In Her Words and our conversation with the very funny writer and showrunner Debby Wolfe. We got to gush about our shared love of classic sitcoms like One Day at a Time, Roseanne, and Lopez versus Lopez. We also spoke about Debbie's passion for creating space for women, multicultural writers, and multi-aged writers on her project. She's very deliberate on how she sets her production teams. We think you're really going to enjoy getting to meet Debbie in this conversation. We're so glad to meet you. I think Renee, I'm not kidding, like 2 years ago was like, Lopez versus Lopez. This is so much fun. Everyone's talking about it. We've got to get Debbie on the podcast. We've got to get her at one of our events. This show is just getting so much buzz. So we really love to hear from our guests, just kind of how you started. I know you're from Florida, so I'm assuming that you didn't grow up in a Hollywood family, but we'd love to hear just what made you decide you wanted to be in comedy, what made you decide you wanted to be a writer and a producer. How did your Hollywood aspirations start?
Well, I actually grew up in the other Hollywood, Florida, which
There it
is
is.
very much the swamp. And I was raised by a Salvadorian immigrant mother and a Jewish father from Miami. So I like to say, like, I like my pupusas with a little pastrami in them. So I grew up like just these two very, very different cultures. I had a major identity crisis. I didn't really feel like I was like Latina enough for one side of the family or Jewish enough for the other. And so like I turned to writing to like just like really figure out who I was. And I would also like latch on to other people that like, to friends, and I would like mimic them because like I would like be like, they know who they are. Like they have two parents from the same culture. And I think that kind of just led me down a creative road where finding myself writing really helped and helped form who I was. And from there, I think it was like in fifth grade, a teacher's like, "You have a gift for writing." I used to write all these stories all the time and turn them in as for extra credit. And Mr. Mingle in fifth grade, who I still thank to this day, said, "You need to be a writer." And that's what I did. I wanted to be a writer director. I did the film school thing in Orlando at University of Central Florida. I had a short that had a lot of success, which, I was like kicking ass because it's usually the boys in film school that get all the attention. And I was the only one to go to Tribeca. So in your face, boys
That's awesome.
who said I couldn't make it. And then I moved out to Hollywood, the real Hollywood, and thinking, oh, here I am. I made a film that went to Tribeca, like, and I have a feature version of it. Hello, Hollywood, like, let's do this. And was just very naive because I didn't know anything. I didn't know anyone. And really had to like just work really hard and hustle and pay my dues. And I took so many different paths. Like I worked in casting, I worked in reality TV, like just taking any gig I could get. My first job was off of Craigslist, but I would always apply to programs. Like that was like always like how I got writing done. Like I think a lot of writers I think struggle with deadlines. So I think having like a program deadline is like really was really helpful to me. And then eventually I got into one of those programs, which is the NBC diversity program, which is now called the Launch. And they really launched my career. They got me my first gig on Whitney Cummings' sitcom back in the day. And
I loved that show. It was so funny.
wasn't it fun? It was
Yes.
really fun. And I thank her. She gave me my first job in the biz. And, it was really wonderful to work for a woman like in power. And I worked with all these like great women in the room who like became mentors of mine. And I mean, of course, I had so much anxiety going into that first gig, like not knowing anything. But I really felt like TV was where I belonged. Like I found my people. as it were. And then yeah, just been working steadily ever since. And really like worked in different rooms for about 10 years, and then I got a show on the air.
You
That was
seem
my journey.
to gravitate to the kind of the classic sitcoms. Was that something that came from your upbringing, or did that just happen with, One Day at a Time and The Connors? And did you love the classic network sitcoms growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like, the way I would bond with my dad is, he would work. He worked in like he did like screen enclosures in Florida. Like we have a lot of creatures. We have a lot of that you have to keep out. So you build these screen rooms around your pool. And that's what he would did for a living. And he would just come home and he would be exhausted, and he would just like plop down on the couch and he would just zone out in front of the TV, and I would join him. And we wouldn't talk. We would just sit there and we would watch sitcoms together. And Married with Children reminded me a lot of my family. I just loved it. We would laugh together, and we watched Golden Girls together. We watched all the Friday night lineup, which
Hmm.
was like, back
Yeah.
Family Matters, Full House, like all those sitcoms. And I just loved it. I loved them so much. And my dad would always say to me at the end of every episode, like, you could do better than that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. And now that I like did it, he like still think like he's like, well, I could do better. Now he says to me like he's like pitching me ideas, and I'm like, okay. Calm down, Sammy Wolf. But yeah, I always loved the format, and I was, that was my first gig, and then most of my gigs have been in multicam TV.
Mhm.
I love just the thrill of like filming in front of a live audience. You get to hear your words, your jokes out loud, and like you get to hear the reaction. And I actually really live for those moments where a joke doesn't land,
Mhm.
where a joke is said in front of the audience and there's crickets. Like I just like
Really?
I think it's so funny because in the room, we're dying laughing. Like we every a joke doesn't make it in the script if we're not all like, think it's
Yeah.
the best thing ever. So like it's just funny that when something doesn't translate, like it's just like I just get such a kick out of it. I think there's nothing.
Oh, that's so funny.
And then you get in the hustle, like what we do in multicam, like on the floor, we'll get in a huddle with the group and we'll all pitch. And that's such a like
Okay.
it's like teamwork, it feels like really like a team sport in multicam to get that best joke out. And then, whoever the writer is that pitched it, like oftentimes, I like to tell them to go tell the actor the joke. They get nervous, they don't want to do that. But like but it's just like it's kind of like it's competitive nature to it, which I really love.
That's great. When you said you did a lot of different odd jobs, kind of until you got your start, do you find that you pull from those so you understand how sets really worked, and especially going into your first job, or how you look at it now and how you look at, the entire set and the entire cast and crew?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I didn't realize it until I became a showrunner, but yeah, all the skills that I got, even from way back when in film school, making my own shorts and like having to produce my own shorts and fundraise for them, and like looking at budgets, and having to get my own costumes, and like and having to build my own props and build my own sets. You have to do everything when you're in
Yeah.
films, and so like I got those skills. Then I made like 7 short films like in Florida, and we were just creating, like we weren't worried about Hollywood, and like what the there was no stakes.
Yeah.
It was just so we were just creating, and I got a lot of those skills then. And then also, yeah, in these odd jobs that I got out here, producing reality television taught me so much, because it was like
Mhm.
also like reality television is storytelling. Like
Yeah.
our role is called story producer, and we're literally producing the story. Like we're filming real people, and they're being themselves to a degree, but we still have to like have a story at the end of the day, so we kind of have to guide them, and we also have to like pinpoint what is it that's interesting about these people and what they're doing day to day. And so that really helps me develop my story skills. And then like I would go into post production as well
Yeah.
in reality TV, and I'd have to string out for the editors, I'd have to put together segments that they would
Mhm.
edit. So that was really helpful too. I learned post production, I learned editing, and I use all those skills today as a showrunner. I also like very fortunately had a mentor in one of my jobs. It was a show called Dog with a Blog, actually, on Disney Channel. It was literally a show with a talking dog. Like that's like a joke people make. Like and but it was that, and but it was like such a fun show to work on, because in those children's television, like, you don't have a big budget to work with, but you have to make the impossible happen. Like, we were like, we're shooting like these epic things with like a paragliding talking dog, and
Yeah.
landing and talking to a goat, and like it's just like there's a lot going on. And you have to do it for very little money and just like figure it out. And the showrunner of that show, Michael Kaplan, like, he wanted every writer to produce their own episodes from start to finish.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was like, it's so great. Like, not every showrunner does that. I do it now with my writers because I do want them to train. I do want to train them, because showrunner is such a difficult job, and there is no real training for it. Some people just get thrown into it, and are quickly fall apart because it's very hard.
What are the challenges you faced when you became a showrunner? Like, based on that, like, what do you find the most difficult parts of the job to be?
Well, I think it's like you go from a writer on staff, where you get to work, you're just a writer on staff, you're sitting around a table eating snacks and pitching jokes, and you have sort of no responsibility other than to just, tell stories and pitch jokes. And then suddenly you're the CEO of a company with 300 employees. So, and it's like overnight, and going into the pilot. And so that's a very overwhelming experience in
Yeah.
itself, because writers, we spend a lot of time alone in front of a computer, in our own little fantasy worlds, and suddenly you're like, you have to collaborate with a ton of people, and you're their guide, and they're looking to you for answers. Like, you have to answer hundreds of emails per day, and
Yeah.
it's just go go go. Like, some days I'm lucky to have 15 minutes to eat a sandwich. Um, and I reverted back to my childhood sandwich, like peanut butter and jelly, because it was like my comfort food in those times of stress. So it was like just hard to navigate, just the overwhelming scale of it. Uh,
Yeah.
Here's millions of dollars all of a sudden, when, like, the biggest budget short film I had done was like $5,000. Suddenly,
Yeah.
millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So it just feels like a lot of pressure, especially as a woman, especially as a Latina, having the only, like, show with a majority Latino cast on network television. I just felt a lot of pressure put on.
Yeah.
And I think that first season was a big learning curve. Luckily, I did have Bruce Helford, who is a legendary sitcom writer. He was my showrunner on The Connors. He showran Roseanne and Drew Carey show, and had a lot of, he's got a ton of experience. And he's like a sitcom Buddha, I like to call him, because he's just seen and done it all. And um,
Yeah.
if I ever had a freak out moment, I could go to him, and he would, like, sort of be like, yes, like, we saw this coming. It's okay. Everything's fine. And it would immediately calm me down. And so, like, yeah, I could turn to him for any questions I had. But yeah, it was just like learning to be a boss, and learning to be a great collaborator. Learning that it didn't all fall on my shoulders. Like, I could, lean on others. I have that immigrant mentality from my mother, like, just like work, work, work. Don't ask for help. Don't ask for help. And so I wanted to do everything and be everything and be everywhere, and I didn't have to. And so second season, I definitely learned to lean on others more, and let things go, you
Yeah.
know, and not be such a perfectionist at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That was very helpful. And like season 2 was much easier. Season 3 was even easier. And now I just feel like an old pro at the job, and there's
That's
nothing to
awesome.
do. Yeah.
That is.
That's great.
What do you like your team and your writer's room to look like now? Like Renee said, you had so much experience from all your different jobs, and now you're building that. What do you like to make sure that, your teams, your writer's room, what do they look like as you're putting your shows together?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think when you're staffing a show, you want to have the point of view of the characters that you've created in the room, and that's really helpful. So I tend to look for writers that relate to the characters, whether they relate themselves specifically to a character, or they have family members that remind them of the characters. And so when I'm interviewing, I just like to just really get to know somebody. Like I like really like to get to know their background, like where they're where they're from, how they were raised, what are their mommy issues, what are their daddy issues. That's a question I will ask, and really do a deep dive into their psychology because I really want to know like who they are and like what their voice is as a writer, and if it's gonna sort of if it's gonna be if it's going to help us create authenticity
Yeah.
characters. So that's really important to me. So that's what I look for. And so we pretty much, we have like, well, you have like a Maya in a room, a George, even like, a Quentin. And so I like having all those voices and like different points of view too. So arguments can be had, or not necessarily arguments, but conversations
Yeah.
with different perspectives that will end up, conflict is what makes a great show. So having that conflict in the room is like really exciting for me.
Yeah.
So that's part of what I look for as well.
When you're talking to your writers, like this is something that like I've noticed, and I'm curious to know if there's a point of view as a writer on this. So many sitcoms have that undertone where there's the jokes for the parents and the jokes for the kids, which make it a complete family experience. How do you balance that in terms of your writing? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like, if you like my kids were the Fuller House, right? Like that was when that came out, and then they watched the original one, and the original, like, it's just there's such a difference in terms of how you fit the whole family into the joke
Hmm.
and how they're related.
Yeah, I guess I don't really think about it in terms of that, of like
Yeah.
these are the kid jokes, these are adult jokes. I think we just think of it in terms of like, we have a multi-generational family. So we do have an
Yeah.
8-year old on the show. And so he just speaks from his authentic voice and like
Yeah.
it's his humor. And that will relate to the kids that watch the show. And same with all the other kids. They're all, they're speaking like their humor's coming from their generation, and I think that just naturally draws an audience in.
Yeah. It's like when we watch Lopez versus Lopez, there's stuff I laugh at, and then my daughter will laugh at other stuff, and then my son will laugh at different. It's just it's something that it's embedded in a sitcom, so it's just such a talent in some
Yeah.
ways that it's just there's something for everybody. And how do you balance that in a writer's room? So I was just curious.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I think they're just speaking
Yeah.
their individual voices. Like we just really try to like. I think like it's really important to have defined characters. Like you just like
Yeah.
kind of like that's
Hmm.
who you fall in love with in a multicam format. I think like exactly like how a George is going to respond to something or how a Mayan's going to respond to something. Like if you understand that already going in, you're going to laugh because like
Yeah.
you kind of anticipate like the conflict that's going to
Yeah.
arise. So I think it's just character development is so important in multicam, and then casting the right people too that have chemistry. Like we were so lucky that to begin with, I mean, we have a father daughter. Obviously, they have a huge
Yeah.
history, George and Maya.
Mhm.
But then bringing in these other cast members that they had never worked with before, it was really amazing. The very first table read of season one, just to see the chemistry of how they all came together, and that's continued to this day. Like our cast really loves each other, so we're very fortunate for that because it doesn't always happen.
Yeah. No, you can tell that they do,
Hmm.
that there's something there.
Yeah.
Debbie, you mentioned the NBC project in Tribeca for the award or the short that you did. Is that where you said
Yeah.
it went? We have a lot of listeners that are starting in their careers and getting out of college or just starting to write. What's your advice on things like that, on grants and on festivals and really trying out that world? Is that something that you would recommend to people?
Yeah, I think like I said, I think producing my own short films was really invaluable. Like I think it taught me so much. And then I also, and then in the end, like you have this piece that you can show people. I actually made another short after that. Um, when I was doing reality television, I kind of like there was at one point I got a little burnt out, and I was like, this is not what I came out to Hollywood to do. Like I'm just working in reality, and I'm like, I was on Hell's Kitchen at the time, and you know, it wasn't hell. It was like a well-paying job, and I
Yeah.
liked everybody I worked with, but it wasn't what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
So I was like, let me make another short, and I made a short about feeling depressed and feeling like I wasn't doing what I was meant to be doing, and it was called Gordita. Um, and um, and I ended up that film ended up playing some festivals as well, and it kind of became my calling card. Like when I
Mm.
took meetings, like people would watch the short and want to meet with me.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I think it's really important to have a visual piece, if you have the skills to write and direct. And you'll want those skills anyway. If your ultimate goal is to be a showrunner, I think starting there is great. And I think like having a social media presence today, like that wasn't as big when I was coming up, but now it's like
Mhm.
huge. You know, our entire show was based on Mayan's TikTok. So,
Right, right.
so I think that that's a great format too, to
Mhm.
showcase yourself as an artist. And like I look at TikToks all the time for inspiration, and I see talent on there all the time, that I want to like cast in the show. So I think that
Oh,
that's
interesting.
a great place to exhibit your work.
Wow, that's really interesting. I didn't even
Mhm.
think about that.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned your dad, and then you mentioned having a mentor. Is there really is there a piece of advice that you got along the way, or pieces of advice that you go back to, or that you know really rely on as things get crazy or you get stressed? Is there something that those important people in your life taught you?
Yeah, I mean, Bruce has a lot of Bruceisms that he's taught me over over the last couple of years. Um, like, let me think of something that he told me. Like, I think he once said, like, you know, the most important thing is like what ends up on television. And I think he meant that, like, you know, there might be like drama on set, and there might be little
Mhm.
kerfuffles here and there, and it might feel like it's the end of the world if, like, you know, you get into a conflict with somebody, or you know, crew or town or whatever it is. But those things pass, and like the thing that lasts is the thing that ends up on television. So I think what he was saying is like you have to like kind of fight for what you really believe belongs there. There's always like, you know, you lead with kindness always, and go forward with kindness and empathy, and you can always, he always said too, another ism, Bruceism he has, is like you can always write a better script, which I think is really great advice, which is true. Like, you know, I think a lot of writers get overwhelmed by notes and get
Mhm.
angry and defensive. And you got to throw that all out. You got to just get rid of that mentality. Like, the truth is, you can always write a better script, right? There's a million ways to write a
Yeah,
script.
that's great
So,
advice.
you know, I think that that's really great advice as well. And that was like really helpful to me in navigating, you know, because we have to deal with on a TV show. You have, you know, you've got studio notes, you've got network notes, you'll have notes from the talent, and then you'll have like notes from production of like maybe things that they can't be done, or and so like you have to navigate. You have to constantly be rewriting. So the willingness and openness to be rewriting is like really essential to making it, I think, in this business.
Debbie, what do you watch? Like, you know, you talk about TikTok inspiration. Like, where do you spend your off time? You know, like, or do you watch sitcoms? You know, I'm curious.
Yeah, I
Is
watch a
there a
lot of
list?
reality TV actually. A ton. I just like, I'm so fascinated. I think reality TV people are just like fascinating characters, and I
Oh,
think
that's
they actually
funny.
help me with my character work. It's also like I work in scripted, so like I just want sometimes
Yeah.
tune out, and I just want to watch Real Housewives fight. But I do watch a lot of TikTok. And then yeah, I'll watch like the sitcoms that are out. But you know, if someone recommends a sitcom to me that they're like, you have to watch this one, like
Yeah.
I just started Jury Duty, which
Oh
I
my,
didn't know
I
isn't
about.
it
haven't watched it.
so funny?
It is hysterical,
Oh,
and it's
Renee,
such
you
a
have to
brilliant
watch it.
concept because
Did you hear about the new season?
no, I
The,
didn't even know there's a new season.
okay, well, they just announced it, and I don't know who I don't know who the James Marsden person is. It's at a corporate retreat,
Oh, stop it! That's going to be great.
right?
Yes. So
Right?
yeah, the concept blends reality and scripted, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
So it's like two of my favorite things. uh,
It's my sister told me about it, and I didn't know it was even on. And after she had watched it, and I was dying. It is so funny.
really, really, really good show. Of course, I'm watching White Lotus like everybody else because must. But yeah, like I think that it's mostly reality, sadly, that I watch.
It's a good no, it's a good escape.
Yeah.
With you mentioned, I mean, multi-camera that you're doing in reality. What are you as a creative and as a showrunner, what are you finding there's a lot of challenges with all of the new, I don't even know what to call them, platforms that, whether it's network and streaming or a feature film, or that you're really having to kind of think about where your project will end up as you're creating it. Has that changed a lot?
Well, I think there's actually like a lot. So I think that it's very freeing in a way because there's so many different platforms. And so pretty much anything you create could probably find a home where it
Mhm.
wasn't like that. I think you had to be more conscious and like specific about who you were going for before. And now you
Mhm.
don't, like there's content for everybody now that and in every genre. So, I just like come from a place of like, what is it that I'm passionate about? Like, what story am I passionate to tell? What do I relate to personally? Like, I think for me, like a common thread in all my writing is like, I've done a lot of therapy, growing up with this identity crisis and generational trauma and all that. Like I've done a ton of therapy. I can't even tell you, I've lost count of all the therapists I've seen over the years. But it's been a healing journey, and I like to share that healing journey with the world. Like, and so that's what I do. I think when everything that I write now, and Lopez versus Lopez is obviously a prime example that I feel like it's 45 episodes of like it's like therapy and it's like mine because it's mine and George who are actually healing as the show's going on. When
Right,
they
right.
when I first met them, they had just reconnected.
Mhm.
They had just during the pandemic, they had just started hanging out again. They were estranged for 10 years, and they were starting to like work on their relationship, and then we proceeded to have them work on it for 3 seasons, and say things to each other that they hadn't yet said in real life.
Mhm.
They say on camera, and it was very healing for all of us, even like everyone watching, but then everyone on the crew as well. And I had people on the crew come to me and say like, oh, I reached out to my father who I haven't spoken to in
Oh.
10 years because of the
Oh,
show. And I just think that that's like so fulfilling to me to be
Mhm.
part of something that's like, that's bigger than the show, which is like healing. And specifically it from a Latina lens. There's still a lot of stigma about therapy in my culture. We don't really like trust therapists. Like my mom's still like, I told her I go to therapy, she doesn't like it. Like she's like, why are you, why what are you going to tell her that you can't tell me? And I was like, a
interesting.
lot. There's a
That's the point.
Yeah, but there's still like a huge stigma and like like and there's problems in our community like alcoholism and mental illness that we're just like not talking about. So I think I'm drawn to telling those stories and doing them comedically because I think it's easier to talk about them comedically, and it'll reach like a wider audience, and hopefully like open up conversations in people's homes. And I think it has, like we've had people who have written us and said like an episode was gave them like opened a door to talk to their family about certain issues. So I'm really proud of that. So like I said, I just focus on like what is important for me to put out there, and then I don't worry about where it's going to sell, who's going to want it, like who's starring it.
Yeah.
I just
Mhm.
start from a place of like what means something to me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you ever find you have writer's block? Like, how do you ground yourself or find that inspiration or don't know where a storyline is going to go or a narrative is going to go?
All the time. I think I'm the biggest procrastinator. Um, But someone said this to me the other day, and another writer I really admire, Linda Yvette Chavez. She
Mhm.
wrote she created Hentified. She said she's like it's part of the process. Is just kind of like is procrastinating because you're
Yeah.
not really procrastinating. You're listening to podcasts. You're reading books. You're looking at TikToks. All of this is like informing ultimately what you're going to end up writing. Like it's all kind of like seeping into your subconscious. I now say, like, instead of saying procrastinating, I'm saying I'm like, this is my process.
Your research.
Yeah, it's
Different lens on it.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, I try to force myself to go to a coffee shop or go somewhere. I like to be around people who have their laptops open. For me, that feels a little motivating. I have a competitive nature in me, so I'm like, okay, what are they writing? I'm gonna write too. I do that. I'm trying to think what other tricks I have, like because if I don't have deadlines, it's very hard for me. But
Yeah.
so I try to put so now I just like put deadlines in my calendar, like
Yeah.
my own deadlines. To me, I think like having a visual board up too of like your calendar with like your ideas and your deadlines that you want to finish them by is very helpful.
What do you want to do next? What is there, I mean, you're obviously known for comedy, and is there another genre that you want to explore, or what are you working on that's coming next?
Yeah, well, I have a pilot at NBC. I can't really talk about it just yet, but developing that, and I think like I will always like fight for Latine representation on television. There just like isn't enough. So I think anything I do will have, Latine talent involved. There's so many funny people out there that I just like really admire and think are stars that I want to write for. uh, I really want to get into the single cam biz. I've been doing, multicam for a
Yeah.
while. I've done two single cams. I did Love Victor and Primo, which I really loved, which unfortunately got canceled. And so yeah, I want to get into the single cam game. I love fantasy actually. I love the
Oh.
fantasy genre. Yeah, like I grew up like my favorite movies were like Never Ending Story and Labyrinth and anything with Muppets. So I want to blend that with comedy eventually. We just did like we did an episode season 3 of Lopez with Muppets in it, and I was just so happy about it. We had
It's the
like
small
real,
things. You
yeah,
have to
Yeah.
put your personality into it, right?
yeah, exactly. Like we had like real puppeteers come in that were like from the Muppets, and they were like just incredible. Like they were like, and they took it really seriously. They're like, "Do you want it like this, or do you want it like this?" Like and so it was like really wonderful to do that. Yeah, we play around with fantasy a lot in Lopez, and
Mhm.
so I think that's part of our culture too, like sort of surreal humor is big in the Latin community. So I want to blend that and hopefully I'll sell some more projects. I'm a showrunner now, so people like want to listen to my pitches, which is great. It was much harder before, but now I can get meetings, so that's a really good thing.
That's great.
Well, Debbie, thank you so much for being here. The time has gone so fast, but it is
Yeah,
so nice to meet you. You can tell we love the show, but it was so nice to meet you. And I think you shared so much with our audience. They are really, really going to take away some little nuggets of advice that are fantastic.
great. Thank you so much. And yeah, if I would just want to say if everyone can tune in, we don't have a season 4 yet. We are the only Latina TV show in network
Yes.
television. We really,
That's
if
crazy
everyone
to me.
I know, if
That's
everyone could
absolutely crazy.
stream season 3, it's on Peacock right now. Those numbers will help in the next
Okay.
couple months while NBC makes their decision.
We will get the word
Absolutely.
out.
We'll get the
Thank
word
you.
out. We'll send it
Thank
out.
you. In her words, get the word out.
We will.
Thank you for listening to In Her Words. We hope you'll join us at womeninentertainment.com and go to our Substack for extended interviews and behind the scenes access.